Have you ever stopped to think about that slice of toast you had this morning, or the sandwich you ate for lunch? Bread is so fundamental to our lives, it's easy to take for granted. But this humble food has a history as rich and complex as any civilization, a story that stretches back tens of thousands of years. Today, we're going to slice into that history and discover how bread shaped the world. Our journey begins in the Stone Age, a staggering 30,000 years ago. Long before the first loaf was ever baked, our prehistoric ancestors were gathering wild grains like einkorn wheat and barley. They would crush these tough kernels between stones, mix them with water, and heat them on hot rocks. The result wasn't bread as we know it, but a thick, nutritious gruel. Sometimes this paste might have been cooked a bit longer, perhaps accidentally, forming a hard, cracker-like flatbread. This was the very first step, the primal ancestor of every loaf of bread that has ever existed. It was simple, it was basic, but it was a game changer. For the first time, humans had a way to process and store the energy from grains, a reliable food source that could be carried with them. This was more than just a meal, it was a survival tool. Now let's fast forward about 20,000 years to the Neolithic Revolution, around 10,000 years ago. This is where the story of bread really starts to rise. In the fertile lands of Mesopotamia, a region we now know as the Middle East, a monumental shift occurred. Humans began to domesticate wild wheat and barley. Instead of just gathering what they could find, they started to plant, cultivate, and harvest their own crops. This was the birth of agriculture, and it changed everything. Why go through all that trouble? Because bread was worth it. With a steady supply of grain, people no longer had to roam constantly in search of food. They could settle down, build permanent villages, and plan for the future. These early farmers developed new tools like sickles to harvest grain and grinding stones or querns to mill it into flour. The dough was still simple, just flour and water, and it was baked into unleavened flatbreads on open fires or hot stones. But now it wasn't just an occasional meal. It was a daily staple. Bread became the foundation of society, transforming nomadic hunter-gatherers into the world's first farmers and setting the stage for the rise of civilization. From these early agricultural communities, the art of bread-making traveled down the Nile to ancient Egypt. And it was here, around 4,000 years ago, that one of the most magical discoveries in culinary history was made: yeast. The legend goes that a batch of dough was left out for too long on a warm day. Wild yeast spores from the air settled in, started feasting on the sugars in the flour, and began to release tiny bubbles of carbon dioxide gas. Instead of a flat, dense cracker, the baker was left with a light, airy, and much more delicious loaf. The Egyptians had discovered leavening. They didn't just stop there. They were true innovators. The Egyptians are credited with inventing the first closed ovens, conical structures made of clay that could trap heat and bake bread much more evenly and efficiently than an open fire. This allowed them to produce bread on a massive scale. In fact, bread became so central to Egyptian life that it was used as a form of currency. The laborers who built the Great Pyramids weren't paid in gold or silver. They were paid in bread and beer. A standard daily wage was 3 or 4 loaves of bread and 2 jugs of beer. Bread wasn't just food. It was wealth, it was power, and it was the fuel that built one of the greatest civilizations in history. They even had over 50 different words for various types of bread and cakes. It was a true culinary revolution. The knowledge of Egyptian baking soon spread across the Mediterranean. The ancient Greeks became passionate about bread. They elevated baking to an art form, perfecting their techniques and creating a wide variety of breads, from simple barley loaves to rich honey-sweetened cakes. It was in Greece that the first professional bakers emerged. These were respected craftsmen who often ran large commercial bakeries. Baking was no longer just a domestic chore, it was a skilled trade. Then came the Romans, who took Greek baking culture and supercharged it. The Roman Empire was built on logistics, and that included a reliable food supply for its massive cities and armies. Bread was the cornerstone. The Romans engineered incredible watermills, using the power of rivers to grind massive quantities of grain into fine flour, far more efficiently than grinding by hand. By 100 AD, there were hundreds of commercial bakeries in the city of Rome alone. The state even took control of bread production to ensure its citizens were fed, distributing a daily bread ration called the annona. They established bakers' guilds, or collegia, which were powerful organizations that regulated the trade and passed skills from one generation to the next. For the Romans, bread was a symbol of their engineering prowess. their social order, and the very stability of the empire. After the fall of Rome, bread-making techniques were kept alive in monasteries and feudal kitchens throughout the Middle Ages. But the next major leap forward wouldn't happen until the Industrial Revolution in the 19th century. This era brought about massive changes in how bread was made. In 1859, Louis Pasteur's work explained the science behind fermentation, leading to the development and manufacturing of commercial yeast. Suddenly, bakers had a reliable, consistent leavening agent. No more depending on wild yeast or maintaining a fickle sourdough starter. This standardized the process and made large-scale production much easier. Then, in 1961, everything changed again with the invention of the Chorleywood bread process in England. This was an industrial method that used intense mechanical mixing to develop the gluten in the dough in a fraction of the time. It allowed for the use of lower-protein wheat and dramatically sped up production, leading to the soft, uniform, pre-sliced loaves that filled supermarket shelves in the 20th century. This process made bread cheaper and more accessible than ever before, feeding a booming global population. And that brings us to today. We live in a golden age of bread. We have the mass-produced sliced loaves from the supermarket, perfect for a quick sandwich. But we're also seeing a huge resurgence in artisanal baking. People are rediscovering the joy of sourdough starters, ancient grains like spelt and emmer, and the incredible flavors that come from slow fermentation. From a crusty French baguette to a fluffy Japanese milk bread, from a dense German rye to a spicy Indian naan, the world of bread is incredibly diverse. The next time you bite into a piece of bread, take a moment to appreciate its incredible journey. You're tasting the ingenuity of our Stone Age ancestors, the agricultural revolution of the Neolithic farmers, the accidental genius of the Egyptians, the engineering skill of the Romans, and the industrial might of the modern era. It's more than just flour, water, and yeast. It's a taste of 30,000 years of human history, baked into one perfect loaf. Thanks so much for watching. What's your favorite type of bread? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this journey through history, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories behind the food we eat. See you next time.